Hello, I'm Pam Dauber. You know, the world of transportation is undergoing a lot of changes these days, and this car is one example. Now, it looks like any other Dodge Intrepid, but this car is a flexible fuel vehicle. Now, that means it can run on standard unleaded gasoline, methanol, or any mix of the two. Methanol is one of the alternative fuels that's changing the way we get around. But why do we need alternative fuels? And how do we use methanol safely? Well, that's the subject of this program. Some days it's so smoggy we can hardly breathe. It's terrible for children and everyone else. Well, I wondered what was being done to help clean up our air, so I asked the chairman of the California Energy Commission, Charles Imbrecht.
The National Energy Policy Act and the Clean Air Act target 100 cities, large urban areas throughout the United States for the introduction of alternative transportation fuels. Alternative fuels represent a unique opportunity to reduce air pollution. We recognized a long time ago that if we were going to improve air quality, we had to reduce emissions from the transportation sector. As part of the strategy both at the federal and state level, we have focused much of our attention on large vehicle fleets. The mandates, requirements, incentives, etc. All trigger over the next few years. Increasingly, the average motorist not only will be able to buy these vehicles, but they'll see them operating on a daily basis on the freeways and highways. I think people will increasingly recognize that we're into a new future for transportation in America.
What is methanol? It's a simple compound of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen known as methyl alcohol. It's a liquid fuel, and 90% of the methanol we use comes from natural gas produced right here in North America. I learned that methanol is used in making many products, common items that we use every day. Methanol is sometimes used to power model airplanes, and it's the only fuel allowed at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Methanol is a winning fuel off the racetrack as well. To find out more, I went to the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority. The MTA operates about 340 methanol buses, which makes them the single largest user of methanol for transportation in the world. The Director of Advanced Technology is Rich Davis.
Methanol is a very clean-burning fuel, much cleaner than gasoline, and particularly in a heavy-duty application, much cleaner than diesel. Methanol has a higher octane rating, however, it has a lower energy content. That means that in a bus, it requires approximately 2.3 times as much fuel to go the same distance. This in turn translates into a heavier vehicle weight because you have a larger fuel tank and more fuel on board to get the same range.
Mr. Davis also explained that methanol is quite corrosive, so all fuel line components must be made of methanol-compatible materials, and people need to wear gloves and eye protection when performing maintenance. At refueling locations, underground storage tanks must also be made of non-corrosive materials to prevent leaks and protect the environment. And following proper procedures is important to make sure that the transfer of methanol is handled safely. At MTA facilities, fiberglass piping was chosen to carry methanol from storage, first to this filter which removes impurities, and then onto the dispensers. Built-in safeguards include shutoff valves, plus special equipment that monitors all methanol components in case a leak should ever occur. With methanol buses, refueling procedures are somewhat different than with diesel. First, a ground wire is attached to prevent sparks that could cause a fire. Next, a fuel vapor recovery hose is attached, so methanol vapor cannot enter the atmosphere or be inhaled by the refueler. After the vapor recovery hose is secure, the refueling hose will be attached. Notice that the intake is closed and can't be opened until the hose is locked into place. This is a safety precaution to prevent methanol from spilling out and creating a hazard. With both hoses locked on, the refueling continues until the tank is full and the dispenser automatically shuts off. Transit buses use pure methanol, but methanol fuel is actually produced in two forms.
There are two types of methanol that we work with. One is M100 or neat methanol, which is what we use on heavy-duty applications such as buses or trucks, or in a race car, for instance. The other type is called M85, which is 85% methanol and 15% gasoline, which is used for automotive and light trucks. The reason you have M85 is that it works better for cold starting, and it's also safer to work with.
Flame luminosity or visibility is an important safety concern with any fuel. A gasoline fire is easy to detect, producing large flames and heavy smoke. By contrast, M100 flames are difficult to see in bright daylight. You might see heat waves or feel the heat if you are close to the fire. But as demonstrated here, you can't see any flames until the roll of paper catches on fire. M85, with 15% gasoline, produces more visible and therefore safer flames than M100. However, M85 flames become less visible the longer the fire burns. To find out what might happen during a car collision, the EPA conducted a test comparing a sedan powered by gasoline and an identical one fueled with methanol. To simulate a gas tank rupture, fuel was released from plugs in the fuel tanks, and pans of burning fuel were placed 5 feet from the vehicles. The first thing the test showed was it took only 13 seconds for the gasoline to ignite. At this point, the gasoline footage was stopped to let the methanol test catch up. It took much longer, 1 minute and 19 seconds before the methanol ignited, and then the gasoline footage was started again. The test also showed that a gasoline fire is more intense. The gasoline flames rose up to 4 times as high as the methanol fire, and the heat created by the gasoline fire caused flames to spread more quickly. After 2 minutes, the flames completely engulfed the gasoline car. The methanol fire, however, never spread beyond the rear of the vehicle. Because a methanol fire creates less heat and vapor, burns in a more controlled manner, and can be put out with water, the EPA concluded that using methanol instead of gasoline could reduce fire-related injuries, deaths, and damage costs by as much as 90%. Transit buses, as well as school buses, are already demonstrating methanol's safety and dependability. But buses aren't the only vehicles running on methanol. In fact, flexible fuel cars are far more numerous, and their numbers continue to grow as more vehicle fleets switch to alternative fuels. One example is the Federal Center in Denver, Colorado. We spoke with the General Services Administration Fleet Manager, Mike Steffen.
Here at the Denver Fleet Management Center, we started using methanol vehicles in 1992. We now have 294 vehicles in our fleet that burn methanol fuel. We have approximately 60 federal agencies that are using these vehicles, and they have 500 to 1,000 people that are driving them.
Hello, I'm Chris Colucci from NREL, here to pick up my M85 vehicle.
Okay.
Customers that are using these vehicles have reported very few noticeable differences between these and conventionally fueled sedans. One thing that they do comment on is that the methanol fueled vehicle using the 4-cylinder engine seems to have as much power as a V6 engine using the regular fuel. One other thing that they comment on is the additional instrumentation that's on the dashboard of some of these cars that shows the percent of methanol being used. That kind of encourages the people to use methanol. It takes approximately 1.7 gallons of methanol to equal 1 gallon of gasoline. But our drivers actually have reported that driving at freeway speeds, there isn't much difference between the two fuels. 24 miles per gallon, for example, on an unleaded regular gasoline car is probably equal to 22 miles per gallon with methanol. As far as health risks with methanol fuel, we find that it's not much different than unleaded regular gasoline. Once the people are familiar with the refueling procedures using methanol, they don't seem to have a problem with the differences in the two fuel.
Still, people should know that methanol is toxic, and swallowing a small amount can cause blindness or death. However, accidental death is unlikely since access to methanol is controlled. At most public stations, it can only be purchased with a special gas card. As with gasoline, inhaling methanol vapor can make you feel sick. To prevent this, all methanol dispensers have a flexible vapor recovery sleeve over the nozzle. Drivers should make sure that the sleeve fits snugly against the receptacle. To prevent spills, wait a few moments after the dispenser shuts off and don't try to top off the tank. If a little methanol splashes on your skin, you should wash the area with soap and water, just as you should with gasoline. One final safety precaution: stay away from exhaust fumes, whether they're from gasoline, diesel, or methanol. They all contain some carbon monoxide, formaldehyde, and other harmful emissions. Of course, reducing emissions is one main reason for using alternative fuels. How much can methanol help? Department of Energy Representative Richard Mora.
Tests with buses have indicated a reduction in particulate emissions of as much as 90%. That's the black sooty material that comes out of the tailpipe, and a reduction in nitrous oxides by as much as 30 to 60%. As far as flexible fuel vehicles are concerned, EPA tests have indicated that in cities where smog is a problem, that evaporative hydrocarbons and exhaust can be reduced by as much as 40%. At the U.S. Department of Energy, we're interested in both air quality and trying to reduce this nation's dependence on imported petroleum. The transportation sector is 97% dependent on petroleum, and M85 and fuels like that offer us the ability to have a more diverse energy supply.
In this program, we've learned that methanol is a viable and promising alternative fuel. We've also learned that methanol is as safe or safer than conventional fuels. Over 11,000 methanol vehicles are already in use in the United States today, and more are on the way. If we use methanol wisely and follow proper safety procedures and precautions, we can all look forward to cleaner air down the road. I'm Pam Dauber, and thank you for watching.